Welcome into One-on-One, live from Studio 318 on the beautiful campus of Oklahoma State University. I'm joined by my co-host, Logan Mosier, as always, and OSU insider, Robert Allen. How are you, Robert?
Doing good. Got through week one, and now it's on to week two in South Alabama.
Yeah.
How are you, Logan?
I'm good. I'm doing good, It's been a crazy day so far, but it's finally time to talk some football, so I'm ready.
You know what? A lot of excitement getting ready for this show. I'll agree
Yeah.
with Logan. We don't have this. We do have this. And, man, it's great. It all came together right at the right time. I like that.
Well, we have you, Robert, and that's all we need today.
I got here a little bit early today. I wanted to learn everybody's names and have a little communal and social period, and so it was good.
We're all learning together, Robert.
Hey, you know what? I remember my days in this building, and they were the formative years of my life. So,
Well, speaking of learning, I want to talk about all of college football because there's not going to be many Saturdays where any of us can really sit down on a Saturday and watch all college football because the Pokes didn't play on Saturday, so we got the opportunity to see a lot of teams in the Big 12, a lot of teams around the country. Let's start in the Big 12. It was not an impressive weekend for the conference.
No, the unfortunate thing about Saturday with the Big 12 was a lot of the ammunition detractors have been touting and now looking for more. Well, the Big 12 gave it to them. Let's start with Kansas Jayhawks. and I mean, I do not mean to chuckle. And you know what? Up in Lawrence, they are anxiously awaiting the first tip-off of the season because that may be the next time they win something. You lose to Nicholls State, and we laugh about it, we joke about it, but you know what? I've been here at Oklahoma State long enough that I've seen some FCS or back in the day 1AA teams that were able to beat Oklahoma State. When I was in school, West Texas State came in and won a game against, I guess it was Jimmy Johnson's team. And, oh, man, those were some tough times. So I can understand that. But that was the first thing, and then you see Kansas State really have to battle and come up with an 85-yard punt return from Isaiah Zuber to eke out a win over South Dakota. Hated to see Iowa State didn't get their game in because now they've got to play Iowa this week, guys. And they got 4 minutes of football in. That's a disadvantage. So those were the bad things. We can get around to the good, and it's not necessarily good for the fans around here because you've got to tout the Sooners. That was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, their starters were taking a break, 8 minutes left in the second quarter. I said last week, I thought with these first 2 weeks, not OU was going to win probably against Florida Atlantic and UCLA, but with Mike Stoops and that defense and those offensive minds, well, UCLA fell flat on their face. It wasn't Chip Kelly's fault that he had a guy he didn't recruit and had to start a freshman after Wilton Spate got hurt, but OU is probably going to manhandle UCLA.
Yeah, that does not look like a good matchup heading into this week. And going back to the first week, we didn't hit on Texas Tech. That's one I predicted in the summer. I just didn't think Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, I think their defense in Lubbock is better. It didn't show up on Saturday, unfortunately for them, but I think their offense is putrid. And once they lost the starting quarterback, and he wasn't great, they had one big play, a huge, tremendous catch as a highlight. And other than that, I don't think there were too many highlights for Tech to take away from a 20-point loss to Ole Miss. So, yeah, overall for the Big 12, TCU won the way they're supposed to, and West Virginia was impressive, along with Oklahoma being very impressive.
Yeah, and another negative we haven't mentioned yet, Texas lost to Maryland again. Texas is not bad.
I don't even think about them anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how bad it is for Texas. And I thought they would win that game. I didn't think it would be impressive. I can't believe that Tom Herman is as stubborn as he is. And I mean, I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to say I'm smarter at football than Tom Herman. He that's his full-time job, and he has done some great things. National championship at Ohio State as an offensive coordinator. Turned the Houston program. We didn't really turn it around. He inherited it, and he took it to another level. Good for him. But to keep playing Sam Ehlinger at quarterback and expecting some different results, I'm not sure you're going to get them, Tom. I think it might be time to reevaluate that. And again, he threw interception at the end of the game that cinched it, but had a couple of other turnovers. And I don't get excited about his play at quarterback.
Yeah, we've seen some game-ending interceptions by Sam Ehlinger before.
One, that I enjoyed tremendously. So did Ramon Richards.
Yeah, I believe the headline, the sports section yesterday was, in the Oklahoman, was Texas is in parentheses back on its back. You know, it was not impressive.
If somebody really wants to read a scorching editorial on the drop in football at the University of Texas, check out the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. I don't know which columnist it was, wrote a column that, it beat the Austin American-Statesman, which tried really hard on Sunday, but the Fort Worth Star-Telegram beat them. By the way, the interception with Sam Ehlinger, I do want to congratulate the guy who made that interception, Ramon Richards. And I mean, I don't want to place Ramon and Brad Lundblade, last year's center, over anybody else. But those two guys got re-signed to their practice squads. Lundblade at Cincinnati, Ramon Richards at the LA Rams. And I mean, those are guys that when they were OSU Cowboys, they got doubted a lot of times during their career. And I mean, it's a practice squad, but I think the practice squad salary for a full year for a rookie now, I want to say is like $380,000, something like that.
It's not a bad gig.
Not a bad first year salary coming out of Oklahoma State. That's not bad.
Yeah, and they're both, now the Rams are a lot better shape than they were a few years ago. It's a good organization, and Brad's in a great organization, historically speaking. So there's a lot of guys in the NFL, you know, with Mason and James. Everyone's going to have a good opportunity because they all seem to be in good organizations.
Yeah, and I haven't checked this out. This is not my stat, but somebody, I know we're kind of getting off the beaten path a little bit here, but somebody told me with those guys and with Mason and James, and I know Dan Bailey got cut in Dallas, but that right now, if you add up the total, practice squad and full team, injured reserve, there are more Oklahoma State Cowboys getting a check in the NFL than ever in the history of the NFL and Oklahoma State football. So there's a little, hey, we bring you a little tidbit here.
Yeah, I mean, that says a lot about this program, you know, as a whole, but mostly Mike Gundy and what he's been able to do because you said in the history of the program, I mean, that's something to brag about.
There are more NFL teams now than ever, and with the practice squad, there's more jobs to be had. So
you don't have to mention that, Robert.
It's okay. I'm just qualifying. I mean, I don't want people to think I'm wearing a cheerleader skirt over here. Enough people do that I gotta worry about that. So.
But before we jump to what Oklahoma State did last Thursday, you know, the Big Ten was not impressive. The Pac-12 was not impressive. I mean, Big Ten, you could say, had a worse weekend than the Big 12 did, and that's saying something. The ACC was kind of okay, but a lot of big games. This weekend, USC in 2 weeks is going down to Austin, so it's getting started relatively fast. But on Thursday, we took care of Missouri State 58-17. What was the atmosphere like for you with the new Jumbotron, the concession stand, the first game of the season, a new quarterback? As a whole, what was the evening like for you?
You know, I found myself not looking at the Jumbo, the new video board, which, by the way, the one thing on the video board, I mean, the whole thing is impressive. But the first time the opponents kicked a field goal or extra point into that end zone, and they had that Pistol Pete head, and it kept zooming, staggered zoom in to where you just saw Pistol Pete's eyes. That's freaky. I mean, if you saw that on your television and your living room was dark and you were home alone, you're really disturbed. So I could see where a kicker from a visiting team would get really freaked out by that. Okay, that aside, I've been at Jerry's World, and I was at Texas when they put in, what do they call it, Gazillatron, their jumbo board. So I've caught myself watching games in a board versus watching the field. I fortunately didn't do that, but what I did do a lot was I would look back up behind in the south stands, and I was looking for two things. I was looking at people looking at the board, and there were a ton of them. A lot of people got locked into, wow, that's the biggest TV I've ever seen, you know, and it is. But the other thing I was looking at, clear cups with beer in them, and seeing those in the stadium for the first time. And, you know, kudos to Oklahoma State fans and the students who are 21 or over and part of the, you know, legal drinking age population. I looked up, saw people drinking, having fun, smile on their face. Never saw a problem. Understand afterwards, there was never a problem with anybody with alcohol inside or outside the stadium. So, again, I applaud the fans for taking something new, making it good, and not making something bad out of it. So, because, we all know, I mean, things like that get abused, and Oklahoma State fans, very mature about it. Hey, we'll enjoy a beer with the game, and that's great. And the athletic department made some more money.
Yeah.
That's all that
About
matters, right?
33,000, I understand, was on beer sales.
Yeah, I think they sold just over 4,000 beers.
Like
in total.
4,125, something like that. So
That's an added extra element that has been
I did ask my media brethren if there was any available in the press box. There was not.
Hey, I was watching, I was on the radio all game, and we were watching the game, and I saw you a couple times, and every time Chris and I mentioned it that you were on national TV, so that was pretty fun.
Yeah, I did. I understand that you know what, and I'd really try and avoid that, but you don't know what's going on down there, so, but no, as far as the game itself, I thought it was, and I know we'll get into this deeper, just the overall thought. Oklahoma State beat Missouri State the way you would expect Oklahoma State to beat Missouri State. Yet, there were enough mistakes and enough things that didn't go the way you would want them to, that the coaches coming out of that game were going to have the team's attention and be able to coach them up. So I thought it was a good starting point, basically.
Yeah, I heard you on the radio Friday. You said that's what you want. You don't want a perfect game in week one, because if you go in, what are the coaches going to say to you? You want to have enough mistakes. Obviously, you don't want a ton of mistakes, but you want enough mistakes to where you can get better going into week two. So what were the biggest mistakes for you as a whole?
I thought on offense, I think the offensive line was inconsistent. You go back to that long 93-yard run by Justice Hill. I mean, guys, we could lock arms and we could have walked through the hole on either side of the center on that play. They were out of a diamond formation, and I saw Britton Abbott and Sione come through the line looking for people to block because the offensive line just wiped them out. It was a tremendous play. There were other times that Justice, JD, LD, Chuba, whoever, had to fight just to get to the line of scrimmage and then have a chance to make some positive yards. So, again, you'd like to – you're never going to do it, but you'd like to block plays more consistently like that 93-yarder. So, offensive line consistency, yes, Taylor Cornelius did not hit a deep ball. And I want to chalk it up to adrenaline. I think he was because here's the deal. If he'd thrown those short, then you question his arm strength or you question the timing of the route, that maybe the receiver had outrun the route for Taylor. It wasn't that. He overthrew everybody. And so I count adrenaline. The one he did underthrow was the one in the end zone that was interception. And he, like Mike Gundy said afterwards, he was aiming it. You could kind of see that. So those are things you can correct, but those are things that have to be corrected. On the defensive side, wow, the start, 4 3-and-outs and a recovered fumble in the first 5 possessions. Well, it's been a while since now, again, it's Missouri State. I don't want people to say, boy, Robert thinks the monsters of the Midway have sprouted up in Stillwater, Oklahoma. But there was a time in the second into the third quarter that Missouri State's offense got into a pretty good rhythm. And mainly with quarterback run, which you'll see a bunch of with South Alabama. And then also they were throwing at the blitz and with some slant routes. So those are things Jim Knowles and his defense need to get straightened out. Special teams were mostly pretty good, especially the kickoffs. I mean, Mike Gundy's always talked about wanting to have a kicker who could get touchbacks all the time. And I forget whether it was 9 of 10 or 10 of 11. And I think the one that wasn't a touchback was a mishit. It was bladed, literally.
Well, we're gonna go break down the entire offense, from quarterback to running backs, everyone. But we do have to take a quick break. But we do want to thank one of our sponsors, Oklahoma Air National Guard. Contact Oklahoma Air National Guard at 800-GO-TO-ANG or visit their website at goang.com/Oklahoma for more information about 100% college tuition. We'll be right back on One-on-One here on OSU Student Radio KXZY, Suddenlink Channel 112.
Determining your future by selecting a major can be difficult.
It's okay to be undecided.
Connect with the College of Arts and Sciences, where your options are endless.
Where you can uncover your passions and achieve your goals.
Express your creativity by exploring a career in the visual and performing arts.
Investigate new discoveries to make the world a better place with a career in science.
Advance knowledge, communicate progress, and contribute to a healthier planet with a career rooted in the social sciences.
Discover your career by looking at the world from different perspectives through the humanities.
Realize a better tomorrow through problem solving and mining data that can change lives.
Cast prepares you to succeed through internships, study abroad, student-guided research projects, and service activities.
With 109 majors, 52 minors, and 24 departments, the only thing missing is you. College of Arts and Sciences.
Connect.
Achieve. Succeed.
Welcome back to One on One here on Ocean Student Radio KXZY, Suddenly Channel 112 live on Facebook and YouTube as well. Joined Logan Mosier, OSU insider Robert Allen. Robert, they defeated Missouri State 58-17. Like you said, there was plenty of mistakes, but let's start with those mistakes with Taylor Cornelius.
Okay.
There was a lot of passes that I guess we've been spoiled the last few years because you saw Mason make those passes, and Mason made plenty of mistakes, and especially in big games. I mean, it is what it is. But they didn't go down the field with much success.
Well, I mean, no, not deep with the deep routes. I mean, he struggled with those, and like I said, they were overthrows. I would worry if he was throwing short. I would worry if he was, wobbly and throwing all over the field. But he was, he was overthrowing. I think it was an adrenaline. I think he was juiced up. First start in 5 years, and so I think that was the bigger problem there. In fairness to him, too, and I'm not trying to defend him because he would tell you, yeah, he should have hit those throws. The ones I think bothered him the most were when they caught Missouri State in offsides. And that's an automatic. When you catch them in offsides, you know you snapped it. You see the flag go down. Your receiver's going to run a vertical. You've got one receiver. In this case, I think it was Dylan Stoner the first time. It was automatic vertical down the field. And Taylor not only overthrew him, he overthrew him and threw it almost in the stands, out of bounds as well. So, again, I just think that's just like, when you're playing in the backyard, backyard football, and all of a sudden you say, oh, they didn't cover him. How many times do you miss the uncovered guy? Because you're so excited about throwing it to him that you overthrow him. So I think that was a little bit of what happened, and I expect that to be fixed. I think it gets fixed very simply by the fact that Taylor's going to be making his second start, and he won't be quite as hyped up.
Logan, what did you think of the performance?
I was a little unsure. We had talked about him on Wednesday, and you had talked about his arm, and I wanted to see that arm talent. We didn't really get to see him, throw the deep ball a lot. I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see that at all this upcoming game, but if not, I've got some questions about him. But like you said, I think it's a lot of ring rust.
Yeah, and I think you'll see it because I think what you're going to get now with the one area of the football team that was exposed, that everybody now realizes, oh my God, those running backs, all four of them, they can crush a team. Mm-hmm. So now that you realize it's not just Justice, it's the other three guys as well. If you're a defensive coordinator playing Oklahoma State, okay, we're putting 8 in the box. We're not going to let them run all over the field on us. Okay, well, you get a loaded box. The answer to that is, hey, you got one-on-one outside, let's throw it over their head. Those were, the sad thing for Mason, he loved loaded boxes because now, he could play one-on-one with James Washington and Marcel Aitman. The problem was other teams, even with Justice Hill, did the reverse for OSU when Mason was here. They rush 3 and drop 8 back in coverage. In fact, you saw, you and I we were talking about that Florida State game the other night. Virginia Tech was dropping 8 a ton and daring Francois to to throw on them because they didn't feel like Florida State could beat them with their run game. So I think what now Taylor's going to get, he's going to get a lot of great opportunities. And if he doesn't hit them now with those great opportunities, somebody else will probably get those opportunities. But I have a funny feeling. He did everything else well. In fact, one of the things was checking down. He got through his progressions, and not only did the running backs get handoffs, they got some passes in space and were able to make some yards. And believe me, those guys have worked really hard, the running backs, on catching the ball, knowing that will give them more opportunities. And so they were able to do that. But you're right. I mean, I think fans around here, because they have been spoiled, until they see Taylor Cornelius hit some deep passes, they're going to scratch their head and say, why?
Yeah, well, it's not often that you throw for 300 yards and 5 touchdowns and the next
and
day,
everybody gripes.
Criticizes you. So, I mean, he's going to get better. It was his first start in 4 or 5 years. I mean, what did Gundy have to say about his performance? Because I know Gundy's been patient with him, rightfully so. So what did Gundy have to say about it?
Well, I mean, he's had a lot of things to say because, you go back to last Thursday after the game. The initial thing was he missed 7 or 8 throws. That was disappointing. He did some good things. But then by the time they had digested the video and Mike Gundy had his media news conference on Monday, he came out and said, I was wrong. I mean, he only really missed 4 throws. Some of the other situations weren't his fault, which often happens. And Gundy admitted, I tend to blame quarterbacks first. Most former quarterbacks do. They tend to think quarterback may be the only guy out there that really matters. Sorry. but anyway, no, I think, and here's the bottom line. And, fans have the right to their own opinion. Now, the thing is, it's not an educated one because they don't see practice and they don't see the tape and they don't analyze it and they're not in the meeting room with the players as they're learning the game plan. How well does this guy learn and all that? But fans still have the right to their opinion. They pay for the ticket. They get the right to that. So who's that most popular player on most teams? The backup quarterback? Right now, fans don't know. They haven't seen Drew Brown. And they certainly haven't seen him on the field in comparison to Taylor. So until Taylor hits some deep balls, he's going to have to put up with the fact there's a big Drew Brown fan club out there.
You mentioned Drew Brown. What is the likelihood we see him this week against South Alabama if we're up, like towards the end of the game or something like that?
It's an interesting scenario, guys, and we could burn out the rest of the hour talking about this. That new rule they put in this year, the red shirt rule that allows you to play 4 games and still maintain an extra year of eligibility, and Drew Brown has one. He has a red shirt year available. So if he only plays 4 games or less this year, he can come back. Now, being as old as he is, you kind of have to ask Drew, do you really want to hang around Stillwater that long? Do you want to come back and battle Spencer Sanders? Spencer's a given. I mean, he probably will redshirt and may get into a couple of games to get his feet wet, but he's a given to redshirt this year. Drew Brown is the X factor. And the reason Mike Gundy did not play Drew Brown the other night, 2 reasons. One, they didn't want to burn one of those 4 games. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what Taylor's health might happen, or be in the end of the year. The other reason was, who was Keandre handing the ball to? You guys remember?
Haywood, is that?
Ryan Haymaker.
Haymaker.
Yeah, Ryan Haymaker. Also, you probably needed to note the 5 guys on the offensive line in front of Keandre Woodtee. I think 3, if not 4 of them were walk-ons. So you really want to put Drew Brown with that. I mean, I'm not tearing those guys down. I was happy those guys got to play. In fact, I think that's the biggest value in a game like Missouri State is all those guys get to play. Their attitude the rest of the season is, I'm in this. Coach Gundy let me play some. I'm all in this now. And that you get better effort in practice, and most of those guys will play some scout team. But you don't put Drew Brown back there. He's a 2-year starter at this level. That's like taking John Elway in his veteran years with the Broncos or Peyton Manning and putting him out there in garbage time. So for that reason, Keandre did a good job. Mm-hmm. I mean, the offense still looked pretty good, even though you basically are running out the clock. But that's not where you put Drew Brown in.
Yeah, it was certainly a shock to many fans to see what he run out there. But
and some media members. I heard up in the press box there were some people that, what? You know, I mean, yeah, and they either A, didn't know there was a new red shirt rule. They just couldn't put it all together. And you know what? That's okay, because there's a lot of coaches out there still saying, we're trying to figure this out. But I think Gundy and his staff figured out that was probably not a place to burn a game for Drew Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't know what's going to happen during the year, but certainly the running game was impressive. You know, Justice Hill went 92, 93 yards. He just couldn't quite get into the end zone. He kind of ran out of juice there at the end. But what was the running game like for you to watch? You know, those 4 guys, all of them very impressive.
Well, I know this. I'm a big fan. I mean, you know, I am. When it comes to those guys, it is just flat out fun to watch them play. You know, Justice Hill, you know, we've seen a lot of him. J.D. King, who I think is more the bruiser of the 4. But, you know, his biggest play was that pass play that Cornelius scrambled around, got it to him over the middle, and I think it ended up being a 25-yard pass play. You know, Chuba was the newcomer of the week in the Big 12, had the kick return as well as the big touchdown on a pass play. But I think LD was as fun to watch as anybody, LD Brown. So what would they give in Manhattan, Kansas, or Austin, Texas, or somewhere like that for one of those guys? I think it'd probably help them out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, LD Brown went for 9 carries, 110 yards, and a touchdown. He also had a 77-yard run. There's a lot of speed. I mean, I know you talked about the power. Justice has a little bit of both, but Chuba Hubbard is quick.
Yes, he is. And that's I didn't say anything in the post game, and I'll give you in the layout of the Oklahoma State locker room, the Cowboy Network has a locker near the door, which is where we do the post game, and it's in the same area, the corner where the running backs are. So I see more of those running backs on game day than I probably see any other position, and it was all I could do after the game not to say, hey guys, you want to go back out there and I'll blow a whistle or fire a starter's pistol and let's see who's the fastest, because it just makes you curious. And here's the crazy thing: Casey Dunn, the wide receivers coach, believes one of his guys, number 8, Braden Johnson, he believes he's the fastest player on the team. If that's the case, let's get the ball to Braden, because it's fun to watch speed.
Yeah, and speaking of those receivers, Jalen had a really good game. Dylan Stoner had a good game. Tylan Wallace he had some good minutes. So did anyone in the receiving corps kind of jump out to you, or is it what you expected?
Yeah, I thought Jalen McCleskey, being a veteran of the group, I thought he showed up well, made some, made a diving catch that I thought was really good. And then I didn't think he was going to get in on that reverse.
Yeah.
I know it's not
close.
A pass play. Yeah, but he fought literally to get the ball over the line. So I thought Dylan, like you said, Dylan played well. So, yeah, I thought the receiver court. Here's the one guy, another fast guy, is Tyron Johnson. And got to get him involved. He was not as involved as you'd like last Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big-time talent. He kind of had I don't know how you describe his year last year, but not a lot happened. So hopefully, with South Alabama, the game's coming up, you get more involved. But we do have to take a quick break before we come back with Robert and talk about the debut of the 425. But first, we want to thank another one of our sponsors, Campbell Property Management. If you are looking for luxury living in Stillwater, please contact Campbell Property Management at 405-372-9225 or visit their website at campbellmgmt.com for more information. We'll be right back here on One-on-One OSU Student Radio, KXZY, Suddenly Channel 112.
In my mind, I was never going to walk right again. Before we were through, we had walked 23 steps. And that was my first steps of freedom. This patient is saying thank you.
One-on-One here on OSU Student Radio, KXZY, Suddenly Channel 112, live on Facebook and YouTube as well at OK State, or One-on-One at OK State for Facebook and YouTube. Robert, it was a debut of the 425. How happy were you with that, the performance, especially in the first quarter?
Yeah.
Because they dominated in the first quarter.
Yeah, I'm not sure Oklahoma State fans looking around in the stadium knew how to react when it was 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out, and then you get a fumble. And what a spectacular play by Kenneth Edison Magruder. I mean, he pops the ball and falls on it himself. And again, the energy those guys get from Jim Knowles. I challenge fans, keep an eye on Jim Knowles on the sidelines, because he's an entertaining show all in himself. I mean, just watching his reaction. I'm trying to think. I think it was either Trey Carter or Jordan Brailford. May have been Darian Daniels, one of the big guys up front. Said, we really like Coach Knowles because he's like one of the players. He reacts like he's playing the game. And when you watch him, he's every bit the Energizer Bunny and more. I think we mentioned that in the first show last week. He's nuts. So, but it was fun. Like I said, though, as the game went on, Missouri State made some adjustments, and they've got some things to work on.
Yeah, what did Knowles have to say after the game in this week?
Yeah, this is the other crazy part, and we don't see him in the locker. I guess we could request him, but he did go to the main news conference with the media, and by the time he gets down to see them, he's showered, he's put on a coat and tie, and you'd think he was a Wall Street investor. He's very quiet. I mean, I watched the interviews with him. He's nothing. I wish he would come in and have the energy he has on the sidelines. Might want to curtail a little of the verbiage, but I'd love for him to come to those interviews with that kind of energy. But instead, he's very calm. He said basically what we've said here. Good start, played pretty good. Then we got into the game and we had some mistakes. They did some good, and now we got to get those corrected. So.
Yeah, I mean, 5 sacks and 2 turnovers, so that was a good thing to see.
11 tackles for losses. The 5 sacks, this is something I look at. The 5 sacks came from 5 different players. I'd rather have 5 different players with sacks than one guy with 3 and one guy with 2. Because that tells me, and it also tells opponents, any one of those guys can get the quarterback. It's not just 1 or 2 guys you have to worry about. So I thought that was good. The 11 tackles for losses. Such a key to this defense is how the corners play. And a year ago, you had 2 young corners out there that got beat up a lot in A.J. Green and Rodarius Williams. But they played really well. Again, things to correct. Mainly the slant routes where they threw back at the blitz and accounting for the quarterback, and that'll be huge this week, and it'll be huge in a couple of games in the Big 12 Conference. When you play Oklahoma and Kyler Murray, you better dang well account for Kyler Murray because he can hurt you. So
yeah, I mean, they only allowed 260 total yards, not 200 on the ground, not 200 through the air. Peyton Huslig, I believe, is how you pronounce his last name. He had an all right game, but it was just like last year. He led the team in rushing. I mean, he made some good plays. He ran for 60 yards, I believe, at one point. He had 18 runs on the ground for 109 yards, led the team in rushing, 11 for 28, and 150 yards through the air. He played all right, but for the most part, they kept him pretty tamed. In that late second quarter, early third quarter, things kind of got out of hand. What did you think? What do you think it was, the adjustments from Missouri State, or they kind of got tired, or maybe just didn't care as much, weren't invested?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they looked at a lot of Duke tape, and because you didn't have any tape of Oklahoma State's defense with Jim Knowles, so they looked at a lot of Duke tape. He's changed a few things since he came from Duke, and I think it took them a while. Once they realized where the pressure was coming from, what was going on, you noticed he had the most success, Huslig, when he would stand back there and at the snap he would read where the pressure came from. And I think it was in the third quarter, several times they blitzed Justin Phillips 2 or 3 times in a row. He was able to pick out 19 and just immediately threw the ball back. They were running a lot of times double slants, and whichever direction Phillips came from, he passed it right back at that direction because you had an open receiver there. And so, or at least a receiver who was being guarded by a safety coming up from the back. So it was a pitch, what you call a pitch and catch play. And that's where they made a lot of those yards. The run plays really weren't options, which they run a lot of that. It was quarterback draw, where the quarterback would drop back. Here comes the pressure. Now he can pick a hole, and he was able to pick a couple of good holes. And like you said, had 109. I think it was 109 yards rushing. Again, you don't want a quarterback to get over 100 yards rushing, but when you didn't let anybody else have anything, you can live with it.
Yeah, and he ran a lot at the end of the game when things weren't quite as intense. But Justin Phillips had 5 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. What is it like? I know when the game kind of first came on, I was watching it, and it was just weird to see the 4-2-5, with orange jerseys on. It was like, this is awkward almost. What is it like, with that 4-2-5 to have those 2 linebackers? You kind of have to be, are they going to be aggressive with him, or you going to drop him in coverage? So what is it with Jim Knowles? What does he want those linebackers to do, especially when you get into Big 12 play?
You know what? He mixes it up, and he early on, I think the first 2, I was counting, first 2 plays he blitzed, and then on the third play, it's almost like he was trying to do opposite what the offensive coordinator would think. A lot of times on first down, you don't blitz. You just kind of, okay, everybody play base, and let's see what they do on the first down. He came with pressure, the first 2. And then on third down, I want to say it was like a 3rd and 5 or 6. So it was a decent blitz down. He didn't blitz, which I think kind of flipped Missouri State out. So he was almost playing opposite of what you would expect, trying to play some mind games. And here's the other thing about Jim Knowles, guys. He's a smart guy. I mean, he went to an Ivy League school. He worked on Wall Street, decided he wanted to coach instead. So, I mean, he doesn't have to be doing this. And let's be honest, for some people, coaching is a very profitable deal. But a lot of people think, well, former football player, he'll coach. No, this guy could do just about anything. And he puts his intellect in football, and he's a smart football coach. So he's going to play mind games with the other side, which I look forward to seeing some of that with some of these Big 12 offensive coordinators that think they know it all, because in the Big 12 they've been running up huge numbers. Now some of these guys on the other side are going to have a fairly smart fellow playing chess with them on Saturday.
Logan, what was it like for you to watch this 4-2-5? Were you impressed or what?
It was refreshing. It was, something we haven't seen before. It was, like you said, like first 5 possessions, 4 3-and-outs, and a fumble recovery on, I think, the 5th, or something like that.
It was the 4th one. It went 3 3-and-out, 4. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But I mean, it was exciting to watch. It's something we haven't seen here in a while, and they had a different energy, it felt like, from the previous few years, because I mean, they were going at people, they were making plays. It seemed like a refreshing thing for most fans.
Guys, here's a fun thing. Okay, you got a new big board to watch in the end zone. You got beer to drink, if that's your thing. And now you get to watch a defense where instead of just 4 guys are rushing the quarterback, it might be 5, 6, 7. I've seen him rush 8. So, I mean, and you know what? That's fun football. Now, it's not so much fun when you get caught in a blitz and they throw it over your head and it becomes a touchdown, and that's going to happen. It's going to happen some this year. But I would rather watch football that's attacking, which this defense is, than playing on your heels and just saying, God, I hope they don't score. Now, let's give up a little here, a little there, and let's hope they don't score. No. Jim Knowles is coming at you and saying, forget stopping you. We want to take the ball, beat you over the head with it, and run in the end zone. I mean, he wants to attack.
Yeah, it's big risk, big reward.
Good point. And we're going to see some of that. Unfortunately, we'll see some of both.
Yeah, and for, the fans out there, and certainly us, even, people in the media, you watch what defense they had last year and for the, past 6 seasons, and you watch this game, and it's just changed. It's just the 4-2-5. You can watch it. But those players had to go through a big change. What was the biggest change for them, switching from Glenn Spencer's defense to this 4-2-5 under Jim Knowles?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest change was probably Kenneth Edison-Magruder, who had that big fumble play in the game and played well. He went from linebacker to safety, dropped about 20 pounds, but that's what he played in high school. So he went to Rob Glass and said, put me on the reverse body by Glass. Let's drop some weight. And they have a nutritionist over there, and so he wanted to make the sacrifice, wanted to go back and play safety, and it's worked. He's doing well. I think for you mentioned the linebackers, Justin Phillips and Calvin Bundage. Calvin actually had to put on a little bit of weight, and those guys, it's probably the biggest change for them, in that their responsibilities, especially Calvin's, are so varied. You saw Calvin in coverage all the way on the outside at times, because when they blitz the corner, Calvin with his speed is a guy that drifts out and takes over for the corner. That's asking a linebacker to do a lot to cover a wide receiver, but Calvin's got some pretty good speed. And then also you saw Calvin get a sack, so he blitzes some. He's also got run responsibilities. So I think those linebackers, the guys who probably are having the most fun, are up front, because now it's not so much assignment and gap control, stay in your gap. They're allowed to freelance a little bit in order to get to the quarterback and make plays. So I think they're having a good time. But
yeah, I mean, you mentioned Calvin Bundage with 7 tackles and that 1 sack. And like you said, those 5 sacks were from 5 different guys. So that was pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I heard something today from somebody else in the media that said they spent some time talking to Dan Hammersmith, the safeties coach. And Hammersmith said, I'd like to be Calvin Bundage. And this guy said, why do you say that? He goes, because this defense was made for Calvin Bundage. So I expect him to have fun all year long, because this defense does fit him and his talents.
Yeah, and they've got a big game coming up. Obviously, every game's a big game, starting with Saturday, but, Boise State, and then you get into the Big 12 with Texas Tech. But last year, one of the biggest problems with OSU football was the special teams. They missed an extra point, which you don't want to miss those, but you can miss them when you're putting up 58 points. What did you think of the special teams, especially the return game?
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was better. There's a new guy in charge, M.K. Taylor. is a special teams analyst, but he's really the guy that's dictating, I think, the strategy for special teams. I thought let's handle the biggest positive first. I know there was one kickoff that was bladed. Some people thought it was an onside attempt. He just mishit it. But other than that, they were all touchbacks. And when you know you've got a kicker that can kick a touchback on almost every kick, now you cut back the amount of time you work on your kickoffs because you're not having to worry as much about it. And so that's a big assist. The extra point, that was disappointing, but I think it came, wasn't it the last one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at that point you kind of lost your focus a little bit, but no excuse. I guarantee you Matt Amendola will get reminded of that quite a bit. Punting, too, was okay, but, without Zach Seiner, I thought they overcame that pretty well.
Yeah, we do have to take a quick break before we come back and break down the game with South Alabama. We will be right back here on One-on-One, but before we want to thank our sponsors, The Greenery. Janae is back at The Greenery Hair Salon. Stop by 801 South Main Street here in Stillwater for your back-to-school $50 haircut special. And Flanagan's Footwear. Stop by Flanagan's Footwear for all your game day gear. We have the widest footwear selection in Stillwater. We have brands such as Steve Madden, 9 West, UGG, and more. We'll be right back here on One-on-One, OSU Student Radio, KXZY, suddenly Channel 112.
Planning your future by selecting a major can be difficult.
It's okay to be undecided,
Connect with the College of Arts and Sciences, where your options are endless.
where you can uncover your passions and achieve your goals.
Express your creativity by exploring a career in the visual and performing arts.
Investigate new discoveries to make the world a better place with a career in science.
Advance knowledge, communicate progress, and contribute to a healthier planet with a career rooted in the social sciences.
Discover your career by looking at the world from different perspectives through the humanities.
Realize a better tomorrow through problem solving and mining data that can change lives.
Cast prepares you to succeed through internships, study abroad, student-guided research projects, and service activities.
With 109 majors, 52 minors, and 24 departments, the only thing missing is you. College of Arts and Sciences.
Connect.
Achieve. Succeed.
Welcome back to One-on-One here on OSU Student Radio, KXZY, suddenly Channel 112, joined by my co-host Logan Mosier and OSU Insider Robert Allen. Thank you for coming in, Robert.
Oh, I always enjoy being here. You guys are fun.
We
The
try.
whole crew. We have a good time here.
We do try. A little stressful coming in, but we got it taken care of. So,
And
we're in
like I
good
said,
shape.
you know what? It's a great plan that all came together at kickoff.
Yeah.
So that was good.
7 o'clock Saturday night, the Oklahoma State Cowboys take on South Alabama. Last year they went down to Mobile. It was probably a little bit more humid down there than it is going to be here. Last year, South Alabama had a lot of trouble stopping this offense, and it's as different as the offense it's the same. I mean, you don't have Mason Rudolph and James Washington, but it's still a pass attack. But things have changed down in South Alabama. They have a new head coach, Steve Campbell, I believe. What are the Jaguars going to be like this year?
Well, I go back last year. That was a 44-7 win, but I don't remember what the score was at halftime, but you didn't feel like the Cowboys played that well in the first half, and they kind of punched them pretty good in the third quarter, and the rest is history. But what you're going to get with South Alabama, you'll get some good athletes. I mean, they've got great athletes in that area. Mobile, Alabama, is right there in the middle of an area that's if you draw a circle around it, at least not the part that has the Gulf. but the land part of it, you got a lot of good high schools in that area with a lot of good athletes. Steve Campbell is a coach that's coached down in that south part. He's coached Delta State. He was the coach at Mississippi Gulf Coast Junior College when they won a national championship, and Oklahoma State recruited a running back from there named Dantrell Savage that ended up being a pretty good running back here. So Mike Gundy's got a history having recruited one of Campbell's players from junior college. And then most recently, he was at Central Arkansas and really built that program up. And they came over here, and I want to say played the opening game over here in 2015. And Oklahoma State beat them fairly soundly, but it wasn't like playing a Missouri State. I mean, Central Arkansas hit back, and they were pretty good. So saw their game against Louisiana Tech. They lost 30-26. Fell behind, I want to say 23-7 in the first half, but came back. They were the better team in the second half. So I wouldn't fall asleep on these guys. And Steve Campbell's a serious coach. I mean, he's won at some places that you're not supposed to win at. So I'm not trying to make them into more than what they are. Their biggest problem, they don't even know if they have a quarterback. They played all three of them. Have some injury problems there. The third quarterback, Evan Orth, actually made one of the biggest plays in the game with a long run that set up a score in the fourth quarter. I think they're pretty decent on defense, to be honest with you. They're athletic. I think their corners are actually pretty good. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, he's won everywhere he's been. I was reading about him before the show. He won at the community college level. He won when he went to Central Arkansas. I think his win percentage is, 750. So he's won a lot of games. Yeah,
and the coaches he's got with him, he brought his defensive coordinator that's been with him like every step of the way, a guy named Greg Stewart, and they run a 4-2 front on the defense with a lot of nickel in the secondary. And then Steve Campbell's always called the plays himself. He's given that up. He brought in Kenny Edenfield from Troy, who's been over there with Neil Brown. He was the OC last year when they knocked off LSU and Baton Rouge. And I think Edenfield may have been on the staff at Troy when OSU went down there and got beat. Whatever year that was.
2006 or 7.
Yeah, it was too long ago. I think it was 7, to be honest. But so they've got good coaches. They've got some decent talent. But again, Oklahoma State is a 32-point favorite.
32.5.
Yeah, there you go. See, you putting money on these games?
No.
Okay.
I just like to
I
look.
just want to check on you. Just like to check on them. So again. What I'm looking for is Oklahoma State to win the game the way they're supposed to and make less mistakes than they did in week 1. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're supposed to beat these opponents. These aren't supposed to be games, but at the same time, South Alabama, I know it's a different coaching staff, but they went in to Starkville a few years ago and beat an SEC team, so it's certainly possible, and we saw it all over college football this weekend. Utah State went into East Lansing, and almost Penn State had problems with Appalachian State on the 11th year anniversary of beating Michigan, by the way. But it can happen, so you can't just look ahead to Boise State. But defensively, on our side, they're struggling. They were down. They trailed 20-7 at halftime, came back to 23-20, and eventually lose it 30-26, as you said. But have they named a starter for Saturday?
I don't know that they have. I mean, the starter last week was Colvin. And like I said, Evan Orth was in there by the end of the game. Cephas Johnson got some snaps as well. So, and I think right now, if you look at their offense last week, they snapped the ball 66 times. They ran 43, passed 23. That right there tells me they're not real confident in their passing game right now. So that's the other thing. Last week, one of the biggest problems for Oklahoma State defensively was accounting for the quarterback and stopping quarterback run. It's not necessarily the problem you'll have with Ripon and Boise State next week, but it's a good time to work on that. So the Cowboys will get plenty of chance to account for the quarterback, stop the quarterback run game. Then on the defensive side, or rather the offensive side for Oklahoma State, I think you're going to see, again, some better speed and a defensive style that you'll probably see a lot of in Boise State. So this should be a great week to prep the offense. South Alabama, if we talk about it, if they want to play up and crowd the box to stop the run game, I think Boise will probably do that as well. Here's the week. Everybody together, Cornelius needs to hit deep balls. I mean, you know, this is that week.
So what are the main keys? Obviously, you want to win. That's number one key, is win the game. But offensively, what are the keys?
I think you want to keep all four of those running backs going. I think the longer you can do that, because there are going to be some games in the Big 12 that's going to be mainly Justice and probably JD. So the longer you can keep all four of those guys happy and let them do some things. Cornelius play well. And I'll go back. My biggest key is not the quarterback. My biggest key is that offensive line. You know, you need to protect Cornelius, give him plenty of time, and you need to give those running backs a chance to get through the line of scrimmage and play on the second and third level, because when they do, they're gold. They're going the distance. So if you can block that front consistently, no one will be able to defend this offense if they can do that. So that's my big deal.
If you're Jim Knowles in that defense, certainly you're looking at the tape against Louisiana Tech, and there wasn't a star quarterback. There's not one guy that jumped off the tape you're like, I have to worry about him. But when you don't have a guy that they've named a starter necessarily, and maybe all three guys play again, when you're trying to make a game plan, how frustrating is that when you have three different guys that could be playing?
If you're playing Oklahoma, where they've got that kind of supporting cast, it's probably a little more frustrating. With these guys, I don't know they're going to change dramatically from guy to guy. So I think you're just defending what their offense does, and not necessarily worrying about the faces or the numbers. You're just saying, okay, this is what they like to do, especially because they don't trust their passing game. You know, let's be ready and let's stop the run, and on third and long, get ready and stop the pass, because that's really what they did last week.
Yeah, certainly it's going to be an exciting game. 7 o'clock kickoff. You'll be in Boone Pickens. I hope everyone else here on campus gets out to the game. It's one of the night games that we don't get a lot. So 7 o'clock kickoff against South Alabama. Thank you for watching One-on-One. Thank you to Robert for coming in. For Logan and I, thank you for watching One-on-One here on Ocean Student Radio KXZY, suddenly 112. We'll be back at 2:30 on Friday.
You know, you thought Tech might be an 11.
In my mind, I was never going to walk right again. Before we were through, we had walked 23 steps. And that was my first steps of freedom. This patient is saying thank you.